Hey, today's show is all about trying to pull comps. This will be the funnest one to do because there's so many variables to it and everybody likes to do it slightly different. But hey, that's what we get paid to be as agents, is to be the experts. Because if every property was the exact same price, then we wouldn't need agents per se, and they could sell it on Walmart.com. So anyway, I'm going to put a disclaimer here that this is how I pull comps. It may not be the way you want to pull comps, and you may want to put your own twists and tweaks to it to some degree, but it's a good basic format from that perspective on how to do things. And again, there could be 40 different ways, even between a land deal versus a condo versus a $5 million house. There's a lot of variables here, so I'm just going to try to keep it to the basics, and then you're going to expand on it based on your particular circumstance or situation. So in this case, we're obviously in this here we're going to do IRES. I'm not going to do one for RE Colorado right now, but I'll do one on IRES, and we're going to log in, and this will be my IRES. We're going to do a search. We'll do a search listing search. And here we want to uncheck the search secondary listing types. Let's just pretend like this is a residential detached. We're going to look for active backup, pending, sold. Some people will even do expired and withdrawns just to convince the client that they were expired or withdrawn because they were priced too high. To me, I keep it simple. I'll just do active backup, pending, sold. I'm going to go, when was it off the market? So we're going to look in the last 6 months. So obviously if today is October 27th, I believe we would be looking at April, or somewhere around April 27th. There's not written in stone, but I would go roughly 6 months back. I personally, for now, I start bigger. I start with a wider range versus a narrow range just to see what we get. So we're going to use my property as an example, which I probably shouldn't use this because I don't know all the facts about the square footage and everything, but that's okay. So let's just pretend like we have a house of an address we know. We can go, do the same thing. We can go pull public records on a property to find out what the square footage is. We can find, what the last sales price was, some things like that. So this can be used, I guess I should have opened this up with, this can be used as either a buyer's agent trying to pull some comps to justify a price, or a listing agent. It's really going to be kind of the same process, if you will. So obviously if you're a buyer's agent, you're going to have probably an MLS right in front of you with all the facts on it. If you're the listing agent, you may or may not have all the facts depending on if you met with the client or not. So we could look at this, I'm just going to pretend that if I'm a listing agent right now, I don't know a whole lot about the property yet other than some of the generic facts that are on public records, but I haven't really been to the house yet. So therefore, I'm going to have kind of a wider range on what I'm looking for because I don't know. I haven't been there. Do they have a bunch of upgrades? Did they finish the basement and not do it with permits? There could be a lot of different variables in a listing comp when you go out there, so obviously I'm going to have a wide range on that when I go there. But let's just pretend like, let's just pretend like I have a listing that is one of my listings. So let's just do this one as a buyer. Maybe that's the easier way to do it. So let's do, that's not a good one. That's $1 million property. That's not going to be a standard one. Yeah, that's all right. I'm all over the board tonight. So we'll just pretend like it's my house, my personal property, which we'll call it like 2,700 square foot, and it is it's in Firestone. It's a 4-bedroom, 4-bath, I believe. Yeah, 4-bedroom, 4-bath if you round it up in IRES. So, I sometimes I might or might not put a price in here because I don't want to pull up a bunch of garbage that I know is garbage, and I don't want to pull too high of prices, but we'll just leave that blank for now. Bedrooms, sometimes I'll leave those blank right now because I just want to sometimes start with a larger data source and then narrow down versus start too narrow and miss some things. So right now what I've got obviously is residential detached, it's in which my house is active backup, pending, sold. We'll look back through April, and then what I'm going to do in this case, I'm going to keep it very generic. I'm more of a map search guy if I know the area well, because I don't trust if I just put in a subdivision or I put in a city or whatever. I just don't trust that other agents are putting good data in there. And so if they say subdivision is Stone Ridge, like my subdivision is, but they misspell it, or they put Stone Ridge plat number 2, whatever, you're just not going to get all the data. So I'm just not a big fan of using high-level searches. So in this case, one of the things you can actually do is go under map and address once you go to the map search. Let's put in my property. I don't know why I do this. I should put Justin's property, so if you ever want to burn somebody's house down, it's not mine. Just kidding. So we do that, find that. What it's going to do is going to take me right to my location and my house and everything. What's kind of cool, as you can see, I have a nice lake off my backyard that I don't have access to because it's private. But I digress, as I usually do. So we know like this is the neighborhood right here. So perhaps I want to start here, and I can use a drawing tool and just say, I just happen to know the area, right? If you don't know the area, then you just kind of figure it out. But this is a neighborhood right here. So I'm going to use this neighborhood. What I want to do now is just do a quick count. So 23 houses have sold in this neighborhood with really no real requirements that I've put in yet. So I might be okay with that. Now if this pulled up like 1,082, I'm going to definitely want to narrow down. I want to narrow down a lot. So in this case, we've really done what we needed to do at a high level. So I'm going to hit search. So I guess I'm gonna back out just for a minute and just do a quick public record so you guys can see some of the specifics I would look for. So we're gonna go public records. Wait for that to pull up. We can do a property search. We can do a name search. Again, remember you can do the region. So you can select if it's like I'm in Weld, so we can take Boulder off if we want to. If you're searching by name of an owner, it helps to go by the county because it could pull up 5 million people. If you know the property address, you're probably in good shape. So we'll do that, right? And then we can hit search. Well, that's me. So what we'll know is, okay, 2,500 square foot. It shows it's a 4-bedroom, 4-bath, sold for $225 in 2012. That's when we bought it. Other things I might want to look for is just from a high level public record is square footage. So you can see that the MLS at one point in time had 2,600 for gross. It had 2,500 for finished square foot. So what I'm looking for here sometimes is this shows 2,500 and oops. Sorry about that. This shows 2,500 on the MLS for the finished square foot. Gross area is always 2,636 because that probably takes into consideration the garage, which we don't count garage as livable square footage, so the appraiser's not going to count that. So what I'll look here sometimes is, was it permitted? Because if it says total basement 672 and also above ground, which is right here, 1964. Most of the time, if I'm on a listing thing, I'm going to look and have to dig some information out. So I'm going to say, hey, the above ground square footage is 1964, and if we add 672 together, we're going to come up with, somewhere around 2,600 square foot. It's going to be a little bit higher than that, so I don't know why that's off, to be honest with you, but I'm not going to focus in on that. Alright, so that's kind of that piece of information that I would want to pull. How many bedrooms, how many baths, so on and so forth. So at this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and hit search, see what comes up in the area. So sometimes the reason I may want to filter is 23 can be quite a bit. 2,500 square foot can be quite a bit different than if you had a house that was at 800 square foot or 5,000 square foot. So you might want to start filtering at some point in time. But right now, if you're on a listing side, you might not really have been to the property yet, so you don't really know if it's what the model looks like. And so, obviously in these houses that they're building today, usually most neighborhoods of 7, 5, 4, 8 different model that are in the area, and you can actually figure out which kind of model it is. So in my case, I just kind of happen to know what model my house is, so I can make this a little easier. I would say this is pretty much like my model right here. I would go in and if you've been to the house, great, you can kind of figure it out. This isn't exactly my model, but it's similarly close. And I might start looking at upgrades, and if I've been to the house. Again, if I haven't been to the house, I'm going to have to leave it kind of wide open, because I really don't know. So either way, that's kind of that piece of it. What I'm trying to do is kind of go in and go, okay, we said it was 2,500 square foot, so I'm kind of looking at these ranges here. I'm looking for similar models. I'm also looking to make sure that down in here we don't see that it's a foreclosure or anything like that, because obviously that's going to devalue the property quite a bit, or could devalue the property quite a bit if it's a foreclosure or a short sale. Like I said, in my case, I would say this one's a similar one to the house that I've been to, and I'm looking at things like 365, 347, how long has it been on market, 27 days. I certainly can go over here and look at history, and I can look at, okay, it started at 365, it actually went pending, and then went back to active 10 days later. Have no idea why, because most people don't go pending, but my guess is it went active back up, but they just chose to use pending. The deal fell apart. I'm looking at the dates, like on the 10th or 8th, and then on the 18th was 10 days later, so probably around that 10-day window it fell apart on inspection for some reason. And then, 9 days later, it went back to pending, and it actually sold this time, but they took an offer at 347 instead of 365, right? I'm just really getting kind of granular here. That's really not like the home that we have. This one is pretty comparable to the home that we have. So you kind of saw that the home here, which is similar, sold for 347. See, this one was 354. So again, I'm kind of looking at, some of the differences in the properties if I've been there. This isn't really like my home, but the outside looks like it. So again, I'm looking at square footage up here, how much is finished, so on and so forth. And just trying to kind of get a feel. How many garages? Like the one that I have is a 2-car, this is a 3-car. And once I start getting really where I feel like the square footage is getting way out of control, I might decide to go, you know what, okay, this is too much data. Let's close this one out. Let's go back over here under basic criteria. Let's go ahead and put some square footages in here to limit it down. So we said the house that we were looking at was 2,500, I believe. So we'll just go with 2,500. That just sounds good. All right, so maybe what I'll do is I'll go 2,200 to filter it down to maybe 2,800. Maybe I'll go, hey, it has to be at least 4 bedrooms and 4 baths, because there's some value there. So let's now hit search and see how many pop up. Okay, so in this case, this is why I don't get too granular, because all of a sudden now we only have 2 houses pull up. And that's not like the house that we have, and that's definitely not like the house we have. So now I'm like, hey, maybe that was too granular. So what I'm going to do is close that, and I bet it's the baths. It's the issue. So let's do 3, and let's do 3 here, and we'll do a count. Now we're back up to 7. And the reason it filtered it down quite a bit is because of the square footage as well. So in this case, you've got a 356 home. Those are really not like it. That one's really not like it, just because I've been there and I know. So Again, this is why I don't always filter down too tight, because most of those houses are still not like the house that is in question. So, you know, I would take this out and take this out, and now we're back to 20 houses, and now I have a bigger picture of things, and I can kind of go through and say, hey, you know, I think this is pretty much that is not like the house. I said that earlier it was. I should know my own house. I'm thinking of my neighbor's house. Those are all ranches. Really, this one's just like our house, I believe, and I'll look at the inside of it. Hey, good news is we just got an offer on our 1.1 million, but I don't know if you can see that come up or not. All right, so good video. We'll have to see what the offer looks like. But this is exactly pretty much like our kitchen. This would be subject, just like the subject property. We don't really have a dining room over there, but that's fine. That's kind of the living room. Laundry room. They have an unfinished basement, so something to take into mind is this subject property does have a finished basement. This one doesn't. So you might want to factor that in. This is one of those fun agents that only used a few pictures, so we don't get a good gist of the house, unfortunately. But not all agents are created equally. So that makes it a little tough, but I might say, hey, 362.5, other than we're looking at square footage a little bit here, is you know, a little bit more than the house that's here. How many car garages does it have? It's a 2-car. That's pretty similar. It listed at 362.5 and got 362.5. So, you know, I may be inclined to be somewhere in that, if I'm talking with my client, somewhere between, you know, 350. Again, it depends on where you're at. If you're a buyer and you have all the facts of the property as an agent and you've seen it and you can really get a good visual on it, you might say, hey, that's pretty close to the right price. If you are, you know, not at the listing yet and you've never seen it and you have zero idea what the condition of the property is, yeah, you're going to be at a wild guess. So that's why I don't usually try to give too much values over the phone to people, because I've just never been to the house. And if I say, you know, it's worth 370 and I get there and it's a total pigsty and they've had one too many frat parties there, then they're going to be disappointed. Also, I don't want to go too low, because if they're like, oh, well, you didn't know that we had done upgrades and granite and finished the basement and the whole 9 yards, all of a sudden they're going to turn you down right off the bat because they think, oh my gosh, you're not realistic. So here's something else that's interesting on this one, is it is only a 3-bedroom and a 3-bath. So perhaps, you know, all things considered, maybe this house is worth more than 362.5 because the house that we're looking at has 4 bedrooms and 4 baths. But again, a lot of times I'm just trying to get into the granulars then of how much, you know, this acreage is here. I think the other subject property, the acreage is a little bit more. So, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on seeing it right now. Makes me look like a solid professional right now, right? I mean, obviously we've got the lot square footage here, so you can kind of do that calculation. And usually there's an acreage on here, but I apologize, I'm not seeing that right now. So, on this version of it. But anyways, you would want to look at those kind of things and kind of go from there. So, alright, anyways, that's kind of what I would do. What you could do then is you could choose your subject properties of, you know, hey, I want to use these 4 or 5 as comparisons. You could then go into Cloud CMA. You could create a CMA report from here. You'd fill out the information and it's going to give you an actual package. So, alright, cool. Sorry that was kind of scatterbrained as usual. I've got several things clicking in and dinging in and offers coming in, so I'm a little distracted. My apologies. But hopefully that helps a little bit. Again, for land, you're going to do something slightly different. You got just a few different variables. I always start with the data a little bit larger and then narrow in. All right, that should take care of it.